just wanted to share something real quickly with you because I did not upload a video in addition to the one I do the random videos just because, like, when I'm out or when I'm having moments of revelation, I like to share my thoughts in this journey, because it wasn't until like a couple of years ago that I really began to, once I started researching narcissism, the narcissistic personality disorder, and the many components, characteristics of someone that does have that personality disorder. It wasn't until then that I began to see this situation in a different light. It wasn't until then that I really began to understand why things continue to happen as they do. Even more so, it gave me a strategy in prayer. Because I am a Christian, I am a firm believer in the Word of God and in the power of God. And I also know that the Word of God tells us that in all things get an understanding. So I wanted to understand it so I can, first of all, help myself and my son, because he is consequently being directly influenced by people that carry that characteristic of being narcissistic, and they tend to gaslight and emotionally manipulate him. And for a very long time, I didn't want to deal with this because it is who it is. It is family members. It is people that I genuinely love and care for, in spite of everything. Over the years, I've been able to learn how to deal with my emotions in a healthy way so that I could still show my love, which probably worked against me, because it only put me back in situations where they continue to emotionally manipulate me. So, and what that all comes back to is, okay, so we all know that when you have issues that arise in your relationships, whether it's with your family members, your friend girls, or your boyfriend, girlfriend, your spouse, at work or whatever, you want to sit down and have a healthy, fluid conversations where both sides are able to express his or her feelings, right? And when one person does wrong to the other person, you would hope that that particular person is able to acknowledge his or her faults or flaws and fix it so the relationship can heal. So the person that you hurt can heal. But that's never, ever, 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 ever happened. As I've said in videos before, this has been going on pretty consistently over the past 24 years. Now, I understand that, I would accept apology from a certain one. Number 4, after she did the most. So just some horrible things, some god-awful things, that really, really damaged my son, consequently has negatively impacted my relationship with my son, and has permanently damaged my relationship with her. But I did get a verbal apology. I don't remember which year it was. It was a long time ago. But when you give me a verbal apology, but your actions haven't improved, your behavior has not improved, your attitude has not improved, as a matter of fact, all of that got worse after I received that verbal apology. The apology meant nothing. And so the manipulative part of it was that, you know, when I would go and ask for some type of understanding, why'd you do this? Why do you continue to do this? What was this about? You know, a sense of accountability is what I was looking for, and being responsible in her actions. Not just in her actions, but the guy that she's affiliated with now. You know, the way that he would come out of his mouth sideways with me. That was another dimension that has permanently damaged, dynamic rather, that has permanently damaged my relationship with her. And it's very unfortunate because of my nephew. And I know he misses me, as he's told me that before. But, you know, but anyway, so when I would say, well, you know, I was told and have been told over the years, where you have unforgiveness. They're good for trying to send me to hell. You're going to hell because you have unforgiveness in your heart. Why you keep bringing that up? But just like if you were to have something to happen to your body, you break a bone, or you sprain a muscle, or you know, hurt yourself, and you never go to the hospital, or you never go to the chiropractor, or you never go through physical therapy, or you never go to the dentist, or whatever, to get whatever is wrong fixed, it's going to continue to hurt. And without a proper diagnosis and treatment, you know, the lasting effects can be catastrophic. In some cases, it can be fatal, as it is the same thing in emotional trauma. You know, it's like you cannot continue to hurt me and hurt the one that I love the most, which is my son, and expect me to just be, okay, let's praise the Lord and have a kumbaya moment and keep it moving, and you keep right on doing these things that I'm telling you is wrong. But every time I try to express, or I go to express my feelings about it, I'm always shut down. Or, you know, they'll have this erratic reaction to it, and tell me that their erratic reaction to it is my fault. And I'm like, you keep blaming me for your actions, and you keep putting the burden of your negative behavior on me, like I'm responsible. And I'm going to be quite honest with you. Earlier on in this process, I would say about 10 or 15 years ago, I thought that, okay, there is something wrong with me. And I remember, and this is most likely going to sound very, very crazy, and unless you walked a day in my shoes, you would not understand this, but I thought for a minute this is how it's supposed to be. You know, the way that things were happening, you know, the disrespect that I was getting, the way that things were going, things that I've already shared in previous videos, and other things that I am going to share as different topics in my journey arise. And again, this is only to show you what it looks like. And even when it is family members, I still have to be responsible for my emotions, because when you deal with people that are narcissistic and are emotionally manipulative people and gaslight, in my situation, because their voice carries more influence than my voice, in my case, they've been able to use their voice to affect how my son sees me, which is not healthy for him. And I take full responsibility for continuing to tolerate the disrespect for his lifetime. I take responsibility for that because I was still desiring and craving and continuously desired and craved that healthy connection with my siblings, with my family. And it was so up and down. Like one minute it was like everything was fine. I didn't have to worry about them criticizing me and judging me. And then, after that period of time, however long it lasted, they would revert back to, it's your fault, you're not invited, you think it's all about you. Anything and everything that they could think to say that would deflect. And all of these, based on what I've learned, are tactics that narcissistic people use. You can have narcissistic tendencies and you can have a narcissistic personality disorder. One is no better or worse than the other because both of them are bad. When you have narcissistic tendencies and when you actually have that full-blown narcissistic personality disorder. Again, I'm not a psychologist. This is just based on the information that I've gathered, because one thing we do as mothers, we have to make sure we cover our children and protect our children. And even though my son is of age where he's old enough, he's over 20, he's 24, there's still things that generationally so that I feel obligated to stand against, because based on how things are going, and how things have gone, it's normal for the family to have birthday celebrations and retirement dinners and stuff like that, and I'm the only one that's left out, like I don't matter. And he's grown up thinking that, oh, my mom has done something wrong to justify that, but it's not the case. That's not the case, because there's nothing that I could have done. And like I said, I don't know if I've said this before, but for a while I thought, well, there is something wrong with me. And that affected my self-esteem, because when I looked at the comparison between them and myself, I'm like, there are some differences, but the differences aren't enough to make me stand out and say, oh, okay, now I understand why they don't include me. There's nothing to justify that, And even, when it comes down to how this person that's married into the family now, how he treats me. It's like when he came in the picture, he came into a house where, the youngest one, number 4, had a habit of talking cash trash about me. And saying things that only made me look like I was incompetent as a woman and as a mother and as a sister and as a daughter, and he fed into it for his own, out of his own ignorance. And he's taking on the narrative that he's heard his wife now repeat over the past 10 years, if not longer than 10 years, about me. And he's seen how I'm treated, meaning the guy that's married into the family now. He sees how I'm treated, and so he's not mature enough to make the separation and distinction and say, okay, that's not right, that's not how it should be for whatever reason. And he carries on about me like they do. He may not do it directly now, but I know that's the pathology of his communication with my child. So my child has had to deal with hearing negativity, not just from my siblings and my mother, but also now other family members, like extended family members, that has also believed what they've been told from those particular people, that base group of people, about me. And they encourage my son in a way that's not healthy. I've heard the saying, don't let your good be evil spoken of. They say, well, at least I'm providing a place for him to live. Well, what environment are you cultivating around him? And I'll get into some other stuff about that at a later time. I try not to give out too much because I want this thing to be laid out just as plain as it can be, so we can understand how this has not only affected me, but it's affected the dynamic in all of my significant relationships. And it left me, and has left me, put me in a place where I felt I got to keep doing something to get them to accept me. And it just came to me, this comes back to how peer pressure is in school. You get in like junior high school or middle school and sometimes elementary school, and you want to be accepted and received by your peers, but you can't do it because it's like whatever you do, you'll never fit in. Understanding that just you being you, not being enough to fit in, means you don't belong there. And that is the reality that I am now in my 43rd year of living. I'm having to accept. I'm not, it doesn't make me a bad person. It doesn't make me negative, even though that's how I have been portrayed, like there is something bad about me, like there's something wrong with me. And they use, emotionally manipulative tactics to do what they've done. And like I said, it wasn't until I started tapping into and gaining knowledge about gaslighting and how people are emotionally abusive and can be emotionally abusive by using these methods, that I was able to see, okay, I really, for my own sanity and for my own growth and development, because for years I was in that place. And the consequence is that because I kept trying to make something work that wasn't able to work, even in my best efforts, even in my most genuine efforts, even in my most honest efforts, my son was subjected to seeing me treated the way that I continued to be treated. Because a couple months ago, they got together and had a fish fry for my father's birthday, and I didn't know nothing about it until I called my father, and he told me what they had done that day. He said everybody had left, and he told me what happened. And they have found contentment. They have found clearly contentment in how things are, and are not making any efforts towards repairing. It's always been put on me. Well, Jennifer, it's your fault. You keep bringing that stuff up. Well, if it continues to hurt me and y'all continue to do stuff, do you just think you're not going to ever be held accountable for this? Is that what we teach our children? That there is no, well, you can do what you want to and treat people how you want to treat them, and you'll never be held accountable? Is that the message that we teach our children in the 21st century? Of course not. But, they always, and I know now that being called crazy and psychotic, I took that stuff pretty, it weighed on me. Before my son became of age, before when he was a toddler, when he was a baby, like in the very beginning of his life, they started, oh, Jennifer, you're crazy, you're psychotic, you're delusional, you're out of touch with reality, because and they would say that because I always go against the grain. I don't think like they think, I'm just different. I've always, marched to the beat of my own drum, figuratively speaking. You know, I know which direction God has my life on. And I'm very serious about walking that path and maintaining the standards that I know we were all taught growing up in church, because we are pastor's children. So we know it's basic stuff. And I'm just adamant about living my life based upon those principles, because I know doing it the other way is going to lead me in a direction that I don't want to go in. And I didn't want my son going in that direction either. So I taught him the basic principles. My problem was that I didn't know how to deal with this issue in a healthy way. I kept putting my expectations, they say, wearing your feelings on your sleeve. I kept putting that expectation on people to do right by me and respect me that just don't have that ability for whatever reason. And it's not my responsibility. I know now to try and convince them that you need to respect me, because even the last time I mentioned the way I don't like being disrespected by number 4 and her husband, you know, I was told I'm going to hell. And when I would hold certain ones accountable for how they treat me, and would have that dialogue, instead of them apologizing or engaging in a healthy way with me, they would always give me that textbook response that they tend to give me. And I say textbook because that's the page they always turn to. Jennifer, you're crazy. Jennifer, you're psychotic. You're going to hell because you have unforgiveness. Sweetheart, unforgiveness and accountability are two different things. You look them up in the dictionary, they have two different definitions. Unforgiveness and being accountable, two different things. And wanting reconciliation has nothing to do with unforgiveness. And like I've said a second ago, I thought that I was doing the wrong thing. I thought I was, I thought I was going crazy. It got to a point where I actually thought that. I thought I was going crazy, for wanting to do it the right way. Because we've never done it the right way. So it's like trying to teach a person that's only known the English language, trying to teach them Spanish. And the difference in how the Spanish language is from the English language. They put their sentences together differently when they talk. They don't always have nouns and verbs in their sentences, but that's because of, it's just a different language. So that's what it was like with them, trying to teach them something that was completely out of their scope of knowledge. And it disturbed me, and it still does to a certain degree. But again, this emotional abuse and psychological abuse, I am an advocate for domestic violence because I'm a survivor. Because like I've said in my previous video, the guy that I ended up marrying, he was abusive. And I survived. And I understand how physical abuse, how damaging that is, and sometimes fatal that is. But when you don't talk about the emotional damage, the psychological abuse, and the emotional abuse that people also go through, it kind of doesn't give domestic violence awareness the platform that it deserves. Because even when you have someone that is physically abusive towards you, the physical abuse in the marriage that I was in, it didn't start physical, it started emotional. he started attacking my emotions, which affected my mind. Psychological abuse affects your mind. The emotional abuse affects your emotions. Whether you're happy, sad, all of that stuff. When it's psychological abuse, it affects how you think. They go hand in hand. So in this endeavor, that's my focal point, to talk about how emotional abuse has affected me. And because I do have a child that's in the same position that I've been in, it's just affected him differently, because the role that he plays is different. I'm going to speak out so that we all can walk in freedom, so that we all can understand how our actions, regardless to where you fall in that equation, in this equation, whether you are the abuser or you have been abused, it's not right. And in order for all of us to be able to live a life where we're free, you got to accept the truth about stuff. And that's where I feel short, because I lived in denial about this for many years. I mean, more than a handful of years. And that's only 5 years. So that's more than 5 years that I've been in denial about how it affected me. And because I was in denial about it, it spilled over into my child's life. And we often talk about generational patterns, generational curses. When you don't deal with stuff properly, the adults in the equation, it trickles down and affects the generations to come. And the Word of God tells us that we're supposed to leave an inheritance for our children's children's children. That goes back 1, 2, 3, 4 generations. And sweeping stuff under the rug, still holding on to that old mantra, what goes on in this house stays in this house, that was passed on from our ancestors. That's a terrible ideology to keep living by. It's awful, because this house, meaning me as a person, what's going on in this house, it didn't stay in this house because it affected my child. Even when it comes down to these people that are doing the damage in this situation here, what's going on within them is negatively affecting my son and their children, because guess who else is not connected with me now? And ain't nothing wrong with me. If my nieces and nephews are ever able to speak freely, they know I'm poo-poo gonna cut up with them. We're gonna have fun, but I'm gonna make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do. Homework, keeping your room clean, minding your manners, all that stuff. But now I'm not even permitted. To go see my youngest nephew. So, and that too is because of a manipulative tactic that was used a couple of months ago. I'm going to share some things here on my page that I've come across that gives a better description. Because sometimes when you can put words to it and you can know exactly how to define things, you're able to see in black and white what's really going on. And I've come across a lot of good, reputable information. It's just good, solid information. Not from Wikipedia or anything like that, but I go to sources that I know have factual information. So you can walk in freedom, because that's what this is about. I'm 43 years old, and when I tell you I lived in fear, I lived in fear of retribution because I knew the reaction that I would typically receive when it came down time to address these matters. And I didn't like that reaction, so I just wouldn't push it. I would just go on and, okay, I'll come to you, or, okay, I see it on Facebook and y'all didn't invite me, and I'll bring it up. And I was never given, I was always told it was my fault. Even when it came down to situations, especially since that the little boy that married into the family recently, when there were events that he was at, I was told, well, you just don't come. And my child was almost always at these same events that I was just told not to come to. Or when I found out they had the events, and I found out, well, why was my invite rescinded, or why did you not tell me about it? I mean, sometimes I was invited, but not given specific details. There were some that I didn't go to on my own, even when I knew about it, because of him. Because some stuff I'm just not going to deal with. And that's just fact. I'm just not going to deal with some stuff. Because I'm too old to be telling somebody else's child how he I'm not going to do that. I'm not. And then I'm just not going to do it. But as I stated before, these videos are in no way to talk about anybody or anything like that. I'm sharing my testimony. I'm sharing my testimony because it needs to be shared. In my testimony, I do have a testimony. Because people think that domestic abuse is all about the physical abuse. And it is about that. But you also have emotional abuse and psychological abuse. Because when someone can affect your mind and they can control the way you think, they can control your life in one way or the other. They can control your life. And that's been the story of my life. I'm not saying I'm perfect, because I'm not. But what I'm also not is, not going to let people just continue to mishandle me. Because I deserve to be treated fairly. I deserve to have, I'm going to hold people accountable for how they handle me. And the only time people don't like that is when they think that what they've done and continue to do is God's way. But God don't ordain, and he's not behind confusion and chaos. Satan is the author of confusion. He comes but to kill, steal, and destroy. And that may not always be physical, to physically kill you, or to take something tangible from you, steal, or destroy you physically. Because when this up here is messed up, your life gonna be off balance. And my life has been off balance for an extremely long time. If it was just me, I could just walk away and just be like, okay, whatever with them, and keep it moving. But my child, it's a generational curse. And as long as I got breath in my body, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to share my testimony, because the word tells us we overcome the world by the word of our testimony. The world means sin. The world is full of sin. Sinful ways, sinful behavior. The enemy. You overcome that by, sharing your testimony. So, I promise it's going to be more formal. It's just that sometimes I'm just so busy, and when I have these moments of revelation, I just pull my phone out and push record. But I'm going to have another formal setting where I'm actually not in my truck, to talk more in depth about gaslighting and define certain words so you can have a base knowledge. So if you have someone in your life that's doing the same thing that's been done to me, you don't stay in that place of bondage, because it is bondage. Or if you are the person that is doing the manipulative things, that is being the abuser, maybe one day you'll sit back and realize that what you're doing is not helping. Because whatever you're doing is always going to come back on you. That's just a basic rule in life, principle in life. And I pray that someone else finds the courage to stand up for yourself, because, as hard as it is for me to accept, I couldn't stand up for myself. I didn't know how to earlier on. And even when it came down to me holding them accountable, standing up for myself, I cowered down because they kept, it's your fault. So I would back away. I'm like, well, let me look at myself. And I, was overthinking my actions. I'm like, well, let me do something different. But that's not what should have been happening, Of course, look at myself and fix myself at all times. But I wasn't the reason for the downfall. I'm not the reason for the destruction or the death of the relationship with these people, because I've tried probably too much, and I've tolerated too much. It's a basic principle in life, when you're raising your children and you don't lay the law down and you continue to tolerate disrespect from your children, after a while, and when you allow people around your children that don't respect you, and I knew it, I just didn't want to accept it, that these people really, clearly, this is 24 years later, and they still doing the same stuff, So that's that. Here I am, and here we go on this journey, right? I hope it's to help someone. I hope it's to help anybody that's able to admit either side of it. Either you're the abuser or you've been abused in this manner, to do better so you can have better.